All right.
Correct.
Welcome to episode 347 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bull, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Andrew Callett.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
I'm good. I will also point out for the record that the calendar invite you sent me for this episode was labeled episode 346.
I
So I
know.
think you need to have words with your executive assistant on your scheduling because she's dropping the ball.
Clearly, that's the problem. Yes, it's clearly
No,
somebody
I'm
else made that
good.
mistake.
I have some career news that I'll maybe share next week. So things are afoot. Just a little teaser.
Awesome. You're running for Senate. That's cool.
Well, once you get in with the deep state, they just set up these opportunities.
Fair enough. And by the way, I should apologize. It's been, I think, 3 weeks since we've done an episode. I've had kids get married. I've had travel to other states. It's been kind of a crazy couple weeks. So my apologies. But we're back, and that's what matters.
How dare your children get in the way of our podcast?
I know. It's not unacceptable. I told them no more. No more.
Look, it's only their first marriage. They'll get it right by the third or fourth time.
Their starter. All right. Anyway, I do want to extend a sincere thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you very much. If you would like the high honor of getting access to our episodes a week early, you can do so by becoming a sponsor. Go to our Patreon site. It's patreon.com/defensivesex. Thank you very much.
I echo your thanks.
And moving on, the thoughts and opinions that we express are ours and not those of anybody else. Perhaps our cats and dogs, but nobody else.
That's fair.
Our first story today comes from Bleeping Computer, and the title here is Instructure reaches agreement with shiny hunters to stop data leak. So for those of you in the know, company called Instructure, who has a product called Canvas, which I think is the most widely used learning system in schools, at least here in the U.S., had been hacked pretty bad. Actually, not just once, but twice. So the first time they were hacked, something like 30 million records of students were stolen, and I think that was like across 8,000 different educational institutions, and including universities. And I know there was like a freight train of news. I know that some universities actually canceled their finals because of this. So it was pretty big news. And the second hack was. And the timing of when finals were canceled is relative to the second hack is a little unclear to me. But anyway, the second hack was done using the same vulnerability as the first hack, but the second hack, they used that vulnerability to deface the login portal pages of the end customer, the schools that logged in. So when a school would go to log in, they would see a page that said that their data was going to be for sale if they didn't negotiate with shiny hunters. And so the news here is that unlike what everybody recommends, apparently Instructure, I guess, negotiated a settlement with shiny hunters to not release the data. And
not only not release data, but also refrain from extorting any of the other victims that were caught up in this leak.
Yes. So I think that's an interesting tactic on the part of shiny hunters, because it's not necessarily all about the data. It's also about their customers just being harassed by this. Obviously, it's kind of hard to separate the two concepts. But in this instance, we've seen this before with some of the other attacks. The company here is in a tough spot because their educational institution customers are directly being harassed by shiny hunters to negotiate a ransom settlement. And so I can understand, not necessarily agree, but I can understand what drove this apparent settlement, which has, by the way, not been the terms of it haven't been disclosed, but apparently it was enough to get shiny hunters to stand down. So there you go.
This is one of the bigger, at least higher profile, negotiated ransomware, extortionware cases that I'm aware of. You don't usually get the really high profile ones that come out very quickly and say, "Hey, we paid." At least not super often. So
Yeah.
I think this will be a very interesting test case to see if Shiny Hunters keeps their word or if they can control their various affiliates to keep their word. And because that is very important for them to be able to continue to negotiate like this. If they are found to, and they pride themselves on keeping their word, right? They said, "Look, we showed that we destroyed the data, and we gave you evidence and logs." Well, yeah, like that couldn't easily be. But if
The honor
they
of thieves. Yeah.
right, but if they get the reputation of not honoring this, like there was another case, I forgot who it was. We talked about it maybe 6 months ago, where it was a similar situation. Somebody had paid and said, "Hey, okay, we're not going to follow up with any further extortion." And then months later, there was a follow up extortion attempt to one of the involved parties who reached out and said, "Hey, what the hell? I thought you said this wasn't going to happen." And Shiny Hunters went, "Oops, our bad. It was an affiliate who didn't. We'll take
Mm-hmm.
care of it," and they did. So I think they know that their reputation, such as it is, to honor these agreements is on the line when these things happen. So this will be very interesting as yet another test case to see, do they honor their agreements long term?
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing about it is it's it's not going to insulate Instructure from anything that's about to happen. Like they're still going to have to pay for the token credit monitoring, and they're probably still going to get their pantsuit off in court, and they might get fined and whatnot. None of that actually goes away. And so really the only utility in paying it was actually, I think, a long shot hope that the end customers are minimally harmed in actuality. Like, obviously they've been named, and people know who the victims were, but it's an interesting take. And I'm torn. Like I can put myself in that company's position and understand how they got there.
Same. I think it's a really complex problem. I know a lot of people come out and say you should never do it, never under any circumstances should you ever pay, never pay the ransom, never pay the extortion. I
Yeah.
think it's a
And
more good.
no, I was going to say, I think that thought process, I think, is still valid, because you create a moral hazard if you do pay. But at the same time, like, what obligation do you have to protect the victims of the issue that you
Mm-hmm.
caused?
I think it's a more complicated, nuanced decision than just you know not reward bad behavior. I get it. We certainly don't know a lot of the details. We don't know what sort of internal discussion and internal uh, aspects of this came into play, but I'm not one to immediately condemn somebody for paying ransomware or extortion fees. I think there's a lot of things that go into it, and there's a lot of variables that go into it. And there's a part of me that they're defending and protecting their customers and their customer data in one version of the way you could look at this in one way and say that that's how they're doing it. So I think it's a really tough call, and I think for those who look at this as purely black and white, I don't know that that's as fair of a way to look at it until you're in the middle of it yourself.
Yeah, and certainly if you're an end customer, you don't want to have your data actually breached, right? I mean, obviously it was breached, but you don't want it to be
Leaked.
posted online. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
or be
Anyway,
further extorted.
right, right, exactly. So there'll be more to come on this. I know they're going to have a webinar tomorrow to talk about the incident and what they're doing to secure their systems and blah blah blah. I'm sure they'll say that they take the privacy of your data very seriously, but that's what they're going to do. All right. So next up is a story from the Register titled "1 in 8 Employees Totally Cool with Selling Work Credentials." Woohoo!
Oof.
Yeah. This is another one of those situations where you gotta put the report in context because it comes from a company whose specialty is preventing fraud. So,
Jerry, the
I
media
mean,
doesn't put anything in context. What are you doing?
I know. Anyway, that's ridiculous. Let's just jump right in and go whole hog. So, anyway, this report found that 13% of employees believe that selling access to their employers' systems was justified. But wait, there's more.
There's more.
30 because that's like the aggregate. But if you were to segment it, 32% of managers and 36% of directors and 43% of C-suite executives said it was justifiable to sell their login details.
I don't understand that. I absolutely would have expected that to be the opposite, that the lower level staff would have been more.
But if you think that was a lot, just wait because there's more.
No.
81% of business owners felt that selling access to their business was justified. I got to tell you, I had to check the date on this article like 4 times because I was pretty darn sure that the proximity to April 1st was too problematic. Anyway, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It is the 13% doesn't necessarily surprise me. The 81% of business owners, like, I feel like either it's a joke or the question was asked badly or like something else is going on there because I don't know how you get there. Like I can't I mean I don't know. Like I don't know how you get there. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I call
It hurts my brain. It just disconnected my brain.
It didn't make much sense to me either. But let's dig into this because I do think there is some value here. Because I do think, in my assumption, not backed up by this report in any way, is that your lower level staff are more likely to be susceptible to selling their logins. And we have seen that play out in the real world with help desk support, third party support, being bribed to give access to bad actors. Intuitively, I feel that the higher up the food chain they are in an organization, the less likely they are to do that. But this report says otherwise. So let's focus on the low level folks that I think are likely to do it because they're the ones likely to be most disgruntled with the company. They're the ones likely to feel that they're not getting paid well, that they're being taken advantage of, that the business is out to get them or whatever. They're more likely to be disgruntled. And when you're less than gruntled, you're more likely to sell your credentials, in my opinion. Now, here's where I struggle with this article is their recommendation is build a fraud-aware culture and targeted training around this. I disagree because that implies...
Why? Why would you disagree?
I think those who are selling their credentials already know that what they're doing is wrong. So I think that's not going to stop them if you've got this problem. Honestly, I think the solve here is create credentials and authentication systems that cannot be reused when sold or handed off to somebody else in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's a physical device tied to their login, like a device trust or some sort of conditional access, whether it's like a YubiKey or a token or something that is very phishing resistant, I think is your proper solve to this if you're worried about this problem, not just telling him it's a bad idea and here's the consequences. I think if you're worried about less than gruntled employees doing this, telling them the consequences may encourage them to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I also wonder, so I completely agree with everything you said. I also wonder what is the actual incidence of this actually happening, right? So we know that 13%, according to the report, have said that they're okay, or they think it's justified, right? Selling credentials, but that doesn't mean that they've done it, right? It means that they're okay with it. And what I'm wondering is, like, how closely tied to reality is that? Because I know that there have been some instances lately, like was I forget which incident it was. There was some people who sold access, and that resulted in a breach. But we talk about a lot of breaches, and I read about a lot more than we talk about, and it doesn't feel like it happens all that often.
At least not that gets published to us, that's shared out.
Right. Right.
And these are not scientific research projects. These are, how do you feel about XYZ kind of questions. But I don't want to undercut the insider threat for a less than gruntled employee is a real thing. We know it's a real thing. We've seen it. I just don't know how prevalent it may be.
Right. And I think that if you take a step back, right, insider threat as a problem can manifest itself whether it's somebody acting like maliciously as a direct actor, or that they've sold their access, or they've had their access stolen, right? It all manifests itself as kind of the same problem set to you. And what you described is basically the same solution set, handles that whole spectrum, whether it's happening as a result of them getting phished, or them actually deciding to sell their credentials, or what have you. So, you know, I think that's a better way to think about it, right? Rather than like trying to chase after, oh my gosh, here's a new report. I now need to go train my people to not sell their credentials. Like, no, I mean, maybe, but I really think you need to be focusing less on the behavior aspect and more on the technical aspect of how do you prevent that from materializing in the first place.
I agree.
So anyway, I don't know the inner workings of the survey. One of the things that I had in my mind was, like, if they interviewed people at, a bunch of people at, 10 companies, and one of the companies had an employee who sold their credentials, and everybody in that company knew it, like, you can get there pretty easy. Like, you can get those numbers pretty easily. So I don't have any view on the methodology they put into this, but the reality is that some people, especially if you were to talk to, older people, will look at younger people and say, well, they're not very loyal to the company, and whatnot. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But, we are in a unique economic situation. And so I think it's worthwhile taking appropriate precautions to protect your company.
You just want to talk about this article so you could rip it apart, didn't you?
That's kind of the kind of week I've had. Yeah.
I mean, I support that.
And it's going to keep going, by the way. Like, it doesn't get any better from here. Well, maybe it does later. Maybe it does later. Maybe. All right. Next story from the Register. Brace for the patch tsunami. AI is unearthing decades of buried code debt. Holy crap. I hope y'all have like a vulnerability bunker by now. Like, the real reason that I haven't been recording is that I've actually been digging a bunker in my backyard because of Mythos.
Which is hard in Georgia clay. So,
It is, which is, I mean, right, right. Yeah.
but I understand it. And I'm also a little sad that I did not get an invite to the bunker. But that's fine. You know what? That's fine. I don't need you in your bunker. I'll make my own bunker and I won't invite you. How about that?
Fair enough. Oh goodness! So this is about a blog post put up by the CTO of the UK NCSC, who's a very prolific blogger, by the way, in the security community, and generally, I think a pretty reasonable and rational person. But there is a lot of hoopla, I'll say it that way, around the most recent AI models. And it's not just, by the way, it's not just Mythos anymore, because I just have this mental picture of Sam Altman running behind the bus saying, me too, and I've got a model too. And so what they apparently did was they took the latest Chat GPT 5.5 model, and they like stripped off some guardrails, and they called it the cyber model. So anyway, it's a thing. And look, there are a lot of companies. I've actually got some friends who work in financial services. They're one of the companies that was bestowed with the honor of participating in this Project Glasswing. And
Which I'm sure their developers were super happy about the influx.
So happy. Yes, so happy.
Anyway, cool.
I think the challenge here is, it's I really feel like there's this misperception about what it is. Like people seem to think, like the layperson seems to think that it's just this model that like is seeping into all the cracks of the internet, and it's finding and exploiting vulnerabilities like autonomously. And that's not at all what it's doing. It's like relying on people to feed it code repositories, and it's racking up like millions of dollars in token usage charges that's being temporarily covered by Anthropic, and it's still very, very much, the effectiveness of it is still very much predicated on the how people are using it. So
I wonder what the terms and conditions are in that, by the way. Do they get to like train off that data? Anyway, carry on.
I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question. And needless to say, it is finding a lot of problems. Like I think Firefox had something like the most security issues fixed in a release recently. So, and as a result of this, so I mean, it's not all for naught. I think there's a lot of noise in the system. I know that there are an increasing number of my colleagues who are getting vendor management spreadsheets asking how they are handling in responding to the threat of Mythos, which is, I'm really glad I'm no longer a CISO. That's what I'm going to say about that.
Seriously.
But, look, I've said it before and I'll say it again now. There is a lot of noise in the system right now about Mythos, a huge amount. It's hard to separate the bullshit from the reality to some extent. But much like the larger AI discussion, there are people who are making productive use of it, and then there are people who are not. And so it's hard to make like one blanket statement that it is being effective or it's not being effective, because both are probably true in different contexts. And I will also say that I think that even if today the issue is not manifesting itself as a real problem, it will in the future. Like these models will continue to improve, and well, I assume they will. And their ability to to identify vulnerabilities, and probably more pointedly the ability or the capability of people to use the models to do these things is going to continue to improve, because we already know that people both on the on the white hat and the black hat side are productively using existing AI models to find vulnerabilities and build exploits and whatnot. So like it's already a problem. This is not necessarily all forward looking, but
Right.
I go back to like this. It's not a necessarily a different discussion. We can wring our hands about, oh my God, like what are we going to do about Mythos? The age of Mythos. It's the same problem that we've been talking about for the past 15 years on this show. Like, do the basics. This article points out some recommendations from the CTO of the NCSC, like radical, radical, groundbreaking recommendations, such as shrinking their exposed footprint,
Nah, can't be done.
minimizing your internet-facing attack surface.
Impossible. Sorry. That technology doesn't exist yet. Maybe once we finish reverse engineering the UFOs, maybe.
Patching more quickly.
Mm. Well, okay, let's dig into that for a second, because that is the off-stated advice that we as an industry completely suck at and continue to completely suck at, right? So my frustration with this is I've never had a problem finding the bugs in any of the organizations I've worked at. It's getting them fixed on a timely basis has always been the problem. And the engineering teams, the software engineering teams, the infrastructure teams have always been overwhelmed with the patching side of it. So we start making compromises. We're only going to look at the really critical stuff and the really, the most important stuff. And so we start negotiating with ourselves because we can't keep up with the patch velocity.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as I appreciate better tools to find problems, cool, where I think, and I believe this is somewhat what they're pointing to, we still have a fundamental challenge, in my opinion, in most of the organizations I've worked with, of especially software shops, having enough cycles and people devoted and dedicated to doing software maintenance and keeping the lights on and updates and such. So I think the actual real solve here is going to be dedicating more resources and time from your engineering teams to this problem, as opposed to the beleaguered security teams showing up with another 10,000 new bugs. Hey, can you please fix them? Maybe I guess what I'm really saying is we in security have been shouting into the wind on this for years.
Yeah.
And there's only so much we as security can do. We're not the asset owners. We're not the code owners. We're not the ones, and we probably shouldn't be, who can fix these problems directly. We need partnership from the engineering teams. Now, that's not saying that there isn't some radical solutions we could look at in terms of better automation and better methodologies and better, but I guess we in security having this conversation isn't really the solve. We need the software engineering teams to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Is where I'm really going
teams,
with this.
the infrastructure teams.
Yeah.
I think that's what one of the intentions of some of the noise going around is trying to bring awareness. So I think the best model to think about this in is that right now, let's just stick with Mythos for a second, and we're going to suspend disbelief. We're going to go through this thought exercise together. We're going to suspend disbelief and say that Mythos is what they say it is. It's it's awesome at finding vulnerabilities, doing a great job. It is in the hands of a bunch of big companies who are running their code through it, their code that they use from third parties. They're using it to find vulnerabilities, and it's going to manifest in the next coming months as a big pile of vulnerabilities that need to get fixed. And so we're going to have, to your point, our vulnerability list that has to get fixed, that we hand over to the IT ops teams and to the software development teams, is going to get a lot longer. But I think the bigger point is that at some point, Mythos is going to move that model, whatever they're going to call it in the future, is going to move out of its current like restricted access to the public. And once that happens, the thinking goes that, okay, now it's not just, the security researchers and the large company IT teams that are using it to find vulnerabilities. It's going to be the bad guys are now using it to find vulnerabilities in software and also writing exploits. And so, now you're going to be in a position where like it's not just about like appeasing the compliance monster anymore. It's like you have to be able to react quickly. Otherwise, the concern is, we're going to see these like large scale hacks at scale. I'm not sure that's necessarily going to happen because I think the bad guys are also governed by how fast they can write like data to disk, like they're the stolen data to disk. There's just like physical
And there's a
laws
hard drive. There's a hard drive shortage these days.
That's true. That's very true.
I mean, I think the ideal situation though is that we arm our developers with these tools that can be running in the background at time of development or as their AI
Yes.
coding agents developing, and find and fix these problems before they ever ship the prod. Right. That's, I think, the ultimate win here. I think what this article is talking to and what is of concern is all the old code out there that desperately needs fixing that this is going to uncover.
One of the concerns that I have, which I haven't really seen covered a lot yet, is we already have a problem with. I mean, one of the larger problems we've talked about in the past that we have is with out of support stuff, right? And one of the concerns I have is that as the AI models advance and the bad guys, this is going to enable a lot more people who don't necessarily have the skill to go and write exploits and find vulnerabilities on whatever. And so one of the concerns I have is the possible uptick in new vulnerabilities identified with exploit code in old out of support stuff that is being actively used in mass. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, you shouldn't be letting big, important pieces of your infrastructure go end of life or, be, way behind the times because it becomes really hard to fix in a hurry. Sometimes it gets like prohibitively expensive. And so if you're running like an outdated VMware because you thumbed your nose at Broadcom, and at some point there's some like super uber 0-day in ESXi in the version that you have, and in order for you to update, you have to go spend like millions of dollars that you don't have. What that's the concern I think.
Yeah,
I have.
Yeah, I hear you. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. And the other thing I'll say is that there's still potentially a lot of hype around this. We've got, I think our next article talks about this very thing. What's real, what isn't? And
yeah, so
some people are calling this, well, let me just say one last thing. Some people are calling this a Y2K moment. I don't know that it is because I think it's too similar. I think why Y2K captured people's attention, and for the youngins in the audience, there was this fear that as all the computer clocks rolled over on the year 2000, everything was going to break because they only had 2 digits for the year. So they thought the computers were going to revert back to 1900 and everything was going to go down and we were going to have mass power outages and chaos and dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. So there was this huge effort to upgrade all the code to 4-digit year codes. And it was this massive effort and a ton of money was spent on a ton of effort. And some people are trying to say this is similar to that. I don't think it is. And here's why. Y2K was a discrete individual problem that executives could get their heads around very easily. And they could talk to very easily. It had an end date. This is different. This is more of, hey, it's an existing problem we've already been yelling at you about for years and years and years. Now it's just potentially accelerated. I think that will struggle to get the same traction as Y2K did. But maybe the hype will get executives to care for a few minutes. We'll see. Okay, now we
I
can carry
definitely
on.
think the hype is getting people to care. I think your point is super spot on, that it's not a quantifiable thing. Like, I can't say that I have completed replacing all data fields in my database with four digit years. Like, I can't say that. I can't say that I have fixed definitively all of my applications. I can't say that I have fixed the ability of my, to apply patches in, hours in every instance. It's not, it doesn't work like that. And so
Right.
I think it is different. And by the way, did you also know that there are conspiracy theories that Y2K was not actually a thing? That this is something that has been made up.
The efforts to repair the Y2K bug,
Yeah,
or
right.
that the year itself never existed.
That the work to fix the Y2K bug was not real.
Wow.
Yeah,
I wasted a lot of time on something
it's
that wasn't real.
it's wild to have lived through that and then to hear like conspiracy theories talk. It's kind of, it's got to be what it must have been like for people working on like the Apollo project to have to listen to people deny the existence of the moon. So anyway,
You know what? I've derailed us enough. I was going
good
to go
enough.
down a rabbit hole of silliness, but we will go on. Yes, that is crazy. I was unaware of that. I will now have to look into this and then
Yeah, you got to
swear at
search
my
for
screen.
Y2K deniers. All right, our next story also comes from the Register. The title here is Anthropic's bug hunting mythos was the greatest marketing stunt ever, says Curl creator. So this is kind of the other side of it. So Daniel Stenberg has been a pretty, I would say, outspoken critic of AI bug reports. He was just to catch you up. He was the one who had a very very public backlash against AI enabled kind of AI slap vulnerability reports, and so he stopped accepting AI generated vulnerability reports because he and his team were just completely overwhelmed, and they wasn't that he was necessarily opposed to AI on principle. It was that like he was getting swamped with non-issues. And this is it's a volunteer thing. As we talked about in the past, it's hard enough as it is. It's a labor of love, and now you have to wade through hundreds or thousands of reports which are purporting to be vulnerabilities that are not. And so that's the kind of the background with him. Anyway, um, he was not given access, or the Curl project was not given access to Mythos, but somebody who had access to Mythos used Mythos to analyze the Curl code base. And it found a whopping 4 issues, only one of which was a vulnerability. And he said that was actually pretty low severity vulnerability, and which is good. One of the concerns I've got, like, I by the way completely agree with the greatest marketing stunt ever. Like, I think this is, whatever you think of Mythos, it is the greatest marketing ploy ever. It's been absolutely stunning to watch. But there's other things to consider. Like, Curl is a pretty simple application in the scheme of things, right? It's not wildly complex. It's pretty mature. It's had lots of soak time, lots of people analyzing and looking for vulnerabilities over the years. Lots of vulnerabilities have been found and fixed. And so you have to ask yourself the question, like, if there isn't a vulnerability there to find, does that mean that Mythos isn't what it's cracked up to be? And I'm not sure that's the case. The other way to look at it, too, is that it's also very much dependent on the abilities of the person who's using the tool to find vulnerabilities, right? So, like, I've seen some people who are horrifically bad at using AI.
I'm
And
right here, Jerry, right here. That's hurtful.
fair enough. Not you, not you. I've seen some other people
Oh,
who are
other
really, really
other
bad.
people.
Yeah, not just you. How about that? I've seen some people who are really, really bad at using AI, and I don't, I don't know, um, like, did they do a good job, or like, could somebody have done a better job? If it were somebody else using Mythos and would have found a bunch of real problems, I don't know. That's the unknown. That's kind of the challenge with this whole mess.
Yeah, it's so tough to say, right? This is one data point. It's an interesting data point. It's helpful, but to your point, curl may be the example of the theory of open source of many eyes make all bugs shallow, and it's been open source for a long time. I can contrast this with another data point, which is interesting because they've published a lot of this, and again, just one other data point, but Firefox browser. We were hinting at this earlier. They also use Mythos, and they were blown away by it compared to previously they had used Opus 4.6 model, and it found 22 vulnerabilities. They used Mythos, and it found 271 vulnerabilities. If they've also published a chart of their average bug fixes per month that they ship, and for the past year and a half, 2 years, it's been around 20. In April, they shipped 423 bug and vulnerability fixes. So they found great value in it, and also apparently have a ton of time to go fix bugs and vulnerabilities, unlike most of the companies I've worked with who yell at me when I bring them vulnerabilities, but that's a different problem. There's some data points coming out here, and I don't think all code bases are equal. I think it could very well have a great deal to do with the quality of the coders, their approach, how well it's been beat on, how mature it is, how many changes are being made. If I look at something like curl, I feel like that's a relatively, and you said it's a relatively stable code base, doesn't change a ton. Where Firefox and Chrome and such, that iterates very quickly and has a lot of changes going on. So these are two data points, and I think we need more to make a decision. But I'm trying to be fair to your point. This is a marketing hype driven environment at the moment, and we can't see it ourselves. We don't have a large set of third party evaluators who are giving us honest opinion. So we have to go with what we're seeing in the media. So we'll see what comes next. But I find it fascinating to watch for sure.
What I'm very eager to see, especially on the Firefox front, is what does next month's vulnerability patch look like? Do they continue finding hundreds of vulnerabilities, and if they do, what does that say?
Yeah. Or is it just new code that they're finding bugs in? Old? Yeah, that is actually a really interesting question. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, what's the trend look like? Or does Mythos keep iterating and getting better? I mean, at some point you would think there's some, I think, old software engineering science said there was some level of expected bugs per level of code.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And then what? Do you start optimizing to, turn these code bases into faster and less use? And like, that's interesting. What if we fix all the bugs? What then? What would we do, Jerry? What would we do?
What would we do? Indeed, we would have to start training people not to sell their passwords. That's what I would do. All right. Our last story for today comes from Security Week, and the title here is cyber insurance. I know it's a little bit of a letdown. Anyway, this is about the ability for insurance to help inform security discussions with your senior management. It's actually a really interesting article. The actual report itself is quite interesting. It's what is it? Can't see how many pages it is, but it kind of goes through, I think it's like 6 years of claims data from a cyber insurance company, and it talks about the the relative frequency and severity of different types of attacks, and the point being that this gives you something of uh, a set of a more objective talking points when you're prioritizing spend or asking for more money, because unlike kind of the normal fear and uncertainty and doubt that we normally peddle, this gives you some actual data to fall back on, which I thought was quite welcome. One of the highlights was that 90% of losses, right? So think about the money that the insurance company was asked to pay out, was attributed to ransomware. But
Not surprising.
only 12% of the claims were ransomware, which basically means that the claims that were associated with ransomware were far and away much larger than other kinds of losses, or other sources of losses, I should say. So very interesting. The number one technical cause of losses was multi-factor authentication misconfigurations. Interestingly, not the lack of MFA, but MFA misconfigurations, and that was 26% of financial losses were the result of that. So also interesting. Then if you move beyond ransomware, they say that transfer fraud and email compromise were 30% of all claims. So not necessarily dollar wise, but like, by volume, 30% of the claims were associated with that. So this is, your business email compromise, the CFO is trying to get you to wire money for a company they're trying to buy, that sort of thing.
As happens daily.
Often. Yeah. Often. See what there were some other tidbits in the actual report that I thought were pretty good. I'm trying to find that page because I lost it. Let's see. I don't know if this is just the way it happens, or if it's actually some sort of targeting with intent. But they point out that 1 in 4% or 25% of victims in 2025 were in the manufacturing industry, which is interesting.
Yeah.
There's been a 61% year over year surge in ransomware attacks on manufacturers, which is quite interesting.
Especially when we've seen other reporting that ransomware overall is down year over year, and some other reports we've read, not by much, but I wonder what is specific about manufacturing that have gotten them in the crosshairs. That's interesting.
The only thing I can think of is that they I think they actually talk a little bit about that in they hypothesize about that in the article, and that is that manufacturers are believed to be pretty averse to downtime, and so the prospect of taking systems down to upgrade or add friction to the system could cause production outages or take the production line down, and that's viewed as an unacceptable trade-off. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
that's what that's how they're blaming it. But it's interesting that we now have had cyber insurance out for long enough that we're actually seeing the real results of of this. The challenge is that aside from some of the year-on-year analysis, like the manufacturing, a lot of the data spans multiple years, like from the period I think 2021 to 2026. which is interesting. But the problem is that if you follow the trends, you know that there's radical differences from year to year. And so it's kind of hard, I think, to draw like a conclusion on what you should be doing next year or next month or next quarter based on what's happened over the past 6 years. Because the trends have, if we had like huge ransomware problems 3 years ago, that's not necessarily where what you should be thinking about next month. Maybe it is, but it kind of gets lost in the noise a little bit.
I'll be thinking about your mom next month.
There you go. I was waiting for it.
So is she.
I didn't realize how long it's been since I've heard a good your mom joke like that.
And you still have.
I know, I haven't learned my lesson.
It's a wonder you keep inviting me back to the show. Someday you're just going to fire me. Someday.
So there's actually a table that describes like rank order the the source of losses by dollar amount. So if you were to add up all the money the insurance company had to pay out, not necessarily by like how many claims, but by dollar amount paid out, 90% of what they paid out was again associated with a ransomware. The next highest was transfer fraud at 4.2%.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And I wonder if those are direct recovery costs or covering the cost of the ransom itself, or
I don't, we have seen all sorts of craziness with ransomware. If you think back to like when the city of Atlanta got hit, I don't know, that was a while ago. Like they threw like the kitchen sink into the cost of that. Like they had been kicking the can down the road on some major IT upgrades, and they rolled the cost of that into the into the price of recovering from the ransom. And so, it's hard. By the way, that is like the definition of perverse incentives. Like if you say, well, you know what, if I just don't upgrade my IT crap for long enough and then I get hit, I'm going to get the money I need somehow, some way to upgrade. Like that's ridiculous. Anyway,
never let a crisis go to waste.
Little side diversion there.
Yeah, I hear you. So it's tough to know, right? I would find it interesting to know, breaking down those costs. Is it incident response? Is it rebuilding? Is it downtime? Is it business disruption? I'm sure if I dig into some other reports, we could probably get that information, but that's for another show, for another time.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a good report if you are looking for data points to put into a presentation for your budget. This is probably a good place to look because it's something that you could point your CFO to, right? They'll recognize what's in this report. So anyway, that is the show for today. I hear my dinner. I hear the dinner beeps upstairs.
It's like the modern version of the dinner bell.
Yes, the dinner beeps. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I do look forward to getting back on track and doing this weekly again. So thank you for your patience. If you want to find links to the stories we talked about today, you can find those on our website. It's defensivesecurity.org. Look for episode 347. A quick reminder that we have, I think it used to be the best the best YouTube channel in the world. It has been recently upgraded to the best YouTube channel in the galaxy, which I think is pretty cool. But you should definitely check out. It's youtube.com/@defensivepodcasts is where you can find all that awesomeness. And a quick reminder, you can donate to our Patreon site. You can support the best YouTube channel in the universe. Actually, galaxy. We're not at universe yet. We're at galaxy. We're getting there.
I was going to say that's a big jump.
We're getting there. Maybe a couple more months. You can donate to our Patreon at patreon.com/defensivesec, and you can find me on infosec.exchange. I'm at Jerry I am also on LinkedIn, but I treat everybody with a shroud of suspicion on LinkedIn. So there you go. Where can
As
people
you
find you?
should. I am also on your infosec.exchange server at Lurg and on X at Lurg. And the other thing I would say, if you like our show, you found something useful, we're authentic, no AI, none of that fancy production stuff that gets in the way of quality content. Tell a friend.
That's right. AI certified AI free.
Right. Organic, free range, human produced.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely day. Talk again next time.
Bye bye.